everybody. Welcome back to episode 56 of Talkoffamepod with your host, Kyliemontigney. And I'm so excited to have on singer-songwriter Halle Kearns. Thanks for coming on, Halle.
Hello, thank you so much for having me.
Of course, I'm so happy to have you on. So you are a singer-songwriter. What made you want to start doing that and being in this industry?
Yes, so I was about 13 years old whenever I started playing guitar. I just kind of picked it up as a hobby. I just wanted to learn how to play. I thought it'd be a fun instrument to learn, and I ended up falling in love with it. And from there, I just kept playing and playing. I started singing actually to kind of accompany my guitar playing, and from there, I started songwriting and just fell in love with the craft in general. It became my favorite thing to do. And then when I was about 17 years old, that's when I decided that this is what I wanted to do forever. So right out of high school, I didn't go to college, and I just started playing shows all around Missouri and Kansas, which is where I'm from. And yeah, that's how it all got started. Moved to Nashville 4 years later, and here I am.
That's awesome. Like, did you ever think you would become like a singer-songwriter, or you think like, oh, well, this is kind of like a once like kind of thing that hits you?
Yeah, I don't know if I did. I loved putting on shows for my family growing up and, just singing and dancing with my sisters and that kind of thing. And we always joked about, I have three sisters, so I'm one of four girls, and we always joked about starting a band growing up. But no, it was never really something I truly considered. It felt really impossible for me, honestly, just being from a small town in Missouri and having no one in the industry that I knew and no one in my family's musical at all. I didn't think it was possible to make it happen. So that's a good testament to you can do really anything you put your mind to if you're passionate about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Like when I was like 5 years old, I was a very kind of shy, anxiety, independent girl, and like I was very independent, self-conscious, and like I had nothing, like I had like nothing in my place. Like I had nothing that was my passion. I couldn't figure out which was my thing, and like I was always a very shy girl. I had nothing like to do. Like I was always like going like sporting events, like playing sports. As such, me and my brother always play baseball growing up, so I kind of plays a little bit. But my sister always loved dancing, and she did dance growing up, so I always danced with her. But I only did dance like 3 months, so like that didn't turn out very well. But like the thing, like I never actually pictured myself doing a podcast or even doing the journalism because like I was always a very kind of shy girl from a small town in Pennsylvania. And so like, I was like, how is a small town girl in Pennsylvania and a very shy, independent, scared 14-year-old supposed to do a podcast? That's kind of not normal and everything. Then almost a year later, I'm thinking to myself, like, why, like, how is this even possible? Think about
That
it.
is so amazing, though. That's exactly right. It's just finding those things you love, and even if they're outside of your comfort zone, going for it anyway. I still, to this day, I'm 25 now, and still to this day, I get scared every single time I step on stage. And I've been doing this for 7, 8 years, and every time before I get on stage, I have massive stage fright. But it's just pushing yourself and doing what you're scared of because it's worth it, and then just like you're seeing with this podcast.
For sure. So you have released a debut EP finally at the end of 2020, which got 40 million views in under a year. What inspired you to write the EP? And what was your reaction to getting 4 million streams on the EP?
Well, honestly, so again, I've been playing out since I was 18. So I spent 4 years in Kansas City just playing live shows. I didn't have a single song out anywhere. So I kind of built up a little fan base back home and just a consistent following, that kind of thing. But I didn't have any music for them to listen to. So I did things a little bit backwards in that regard. And then once I moved to Nashville, I took a year to do nothing but write for that project. I was just learning how to co-write, learning how to structure a country song that when it's not just me in the room. And then from there, learn production, learn what the studio world's like and everything. So it was a long time coming. That's why I ended up calling it Finally. So I called my dad and I was like, I have these 5 songs. I know what I'm doing. I know I'm putting these 5 out. I just don't know what to call the EP yet. And he goes, how about Finally? He was just kidding around, thinking like, surely I won't call it that. But I was like, that's actually really cool. And it makes sense because at the time, I mean, it'd been about 6 years at that point. I'd been pursuing music without a single song out. So it just felt like this breath of fresh air. It's finally here. Y'all go check it out. And thanks for being patient with me. That's felt like a good intro into what I do as an artist.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I'm like that's kind of how like to think like people are probably thinking like this is taking so long to write. And once you think about it, you're like, okay, well, finally it's finished. So that's a good kind of break like a record breaking point a little bit. Then
Yeah.
yeah, I'm writing a book currently, and so like I was thinking to myself
Wow.
like, what am I gonna call the book? Like I don't know what to call the book. That's literally the hardest part about like writing is what to call the project, and like singer songwriting in general. It's very kind of similar to like writing, since you're
Absolutely.
gathering your inspirations and then you come up with names, and so it's kind of very similar to what writing is. And so I asked myself like, I'm a big Tori Kelly fan, so I was
Oh
like,
yeah.
and I was thinking to myself like, I was thinking about some like things to call it, and like I was thinking to myself, how about Unbothered? Because that's one of her songs, and like I was thinking to myself like, I'm not bothered by people that bully me. I don't really care about what people think, yeah,
Yeah.
and all that stuff. I was like, should I call this Unbothered, inspired by Tori Kelly, or what should I do? I was like, Mom, do you think I should call this Unbothered? And then she was like, yeah, do it, yeah. And I was like, okay, well, you might as well just call it this. And I kind of stuck with it. Now I haven't changed a thing. Like
Oh, that's amazing. Isn't it cool
that's the
how
only
like
option I'll stay
inspiration
with.
can come? Yes, exactly. You can pull inspiration from anywhere, and it can play into your story too. And it's a song about that, but then it means something completely different to you based on your circumstances, and you're gonna get to touch people's lives through now using that same word. And it's just the power of lyrics, the power of writing, the power of all of that is just really, really, really beautiful.
Absolutely. So when you're writing a song, do you usually focus on the lyrics first or the music?
Oh, I'm lyric first always. So I typically when I go into a write, and that just looks like me walking into a room with two or three other writers, maybe one to three other writers, and we just sit down and we start working through a song. It's really straightforward, but I love personally, and everyone's process is different, but for me, what really works is having a really strong idea of what I want to say that day and what the concept of the song is. So I walk in and I'm just like, for Are You Okay, for example, that's my most recent single. I walked into the room and it was just me and this girl named Ava Sapelsa. She's amazing. But I told her, I was like, I want to write a song that sounds like a letter to myself. And it never says that. Like it can sound like it's talking to anyone, but I know that I'm actually talking to me, and I want it to be called Are You Okay? And this is kind of the outline of what I want it to be about. I'm just not sure where to go with it yet. And then her and I just built it out from there. So that's the way I prefer to write. It just helps my brain kind of wrap around the whole idea.
Yeah, absolutely. So do you have anyone they look up to as a singer songwriter or just kind of in general?
Oh my gosh, I could talk to you for hours about this question.
I have so many people I
Yeah.
look up to. I can go on for hours.
Yes, exactly. It's hard to wrap it up into like a quick answer, but starting out young, I grew up on 90s country, a lot of females in 90s country, so like
Mhm.
the Chicks, Faith Hill, Martina McBride, and then getting to like Alan Jackson, George Strait, all of those people. I grew up on that in my car seat listening to them, so I think that's where the country influence comes from. And then all growing up, I listened to a lot of like Jason Mraz, Colby Calais, Ray Montaigne, all those kind of people, kind of more singer-songwriter. And then now I just adore, like Casey Musgraves and Miranda Lambert and a lot of just the legends in country music now because I just love the way they've formed their artistry over time, and I admire that a lot. So I kind of pull from all walks of music, but country is definitely where my heart is, and it's the most focused on storytelling. So that's why I relate to it so much.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I like 2 years ago, I really started getting into country music. Especially this year, I kind of got
Yeah.
into it more. And then like country music is something that I listen to daily. I never get bored of. I listen to, like Walker Hayes, Carrie Underwood, Miranda Lambert. Like there's so many I love, and like there's so many. Like Dolly Parton is one of them. And like Miranda Lambert is like a really an icon right now. Like she's someone that's amazing at what she does right now. And like, did you ever hear the song "Something Bad" by her and Carrie Underwood? The collab
Oh
I
yeah.
this to.
Oh yeah.
You know
Great.
I think that's one of the best kind of collabs in country, like all country.
Absolutely. And it's a two powerhouse women together. I love that.
Yeah, that's one song that I'm thinking to myself like this is no one can like replace this duo. Like this is one of
Yes.
the best duos to ever come in country
It's
music.
so
And I think
true.
there's no one
So
can sing
true.
the song right.
Yep. Yeah, two legends together for that one.
So when you are writing a song, do you have anything specific that inspires you when you're writing?
Lately, I've been really loving to just pull from the deepest parts of my heart, that sounds really cheesy, but like truly finding the most vulnerable parts of me and exposing those, because I think there's a lot of power and a lot of healing that comes through music if you are able to be truly authentic through it. So it took me a while to get to that point, and I'm obviously still growing in it and still learning, but I think the more vulnerable I am, the more connected I feel to my audience, the more healing I feel through it for me and for other people. You know, I get messages all the time about certain songs, like people really relating to certain songs and it helping them a lot through hard times and that kind of thing. So that is like my biggest dream, is just to, you know, whether it's 10 people or 10 million people, I just want to touch people with my lyrics. So that is definitely the priority for me.
Yeah, absolutely. That's kind of what I'm trying to do. I'm in the same exact kind of thing as you. Like, I'm trying to inspire, like, not only hundreds of people, not the people that, I don't know how many people listen to this podcast necessary, but a couple hundred at least. But like no matter how many like views I get, like that's something that I don't count on. That's something like, as long as I'm doing a podcast, if I like it, then I'm happy. Like, I don't care about the views. That's really the most important thing. And so like, I'm as long as I'm inspiring people, making an impact in their lives with this podcast and a guest and all those things, and then I'm doing something right. Like, that's really the most important thing.
Could not agree more with you.
And so you recently came out with a song called Nothing Left. What basically inspired you to write that song?
Yeah, speaking of vulnerability, oh my gosh, this one pulled me in so many directions. The day I sat down to write this one, I was feeling very, very lost, very defeated, very drained, and just tired and emotional. And I just remember Kendall Brower was one of the writers I wrote it with, and I just remember sitting down, and we're very similar in our like sensitivities and our emotions and everything. So I just told her that what I was feeling and everything I was walking through, and she's like, I cannot tell you how much I relate to that feeling and how many times I've felt like that. So let's write about it. And we started talking about those emotions, and actually the hook used to be different. I can't remember what it was, but we landed on something else, and then later went back and changed it to Nothing Left. And when I wrote that song and I heard it back the first time, I just sobbed. I was like, it just came from a place of feeling really tired because I wasn't taking care of myself, which kind of plays into the next one, Are You Okay? Where, you know, for a while there was just running, trying to be everything for everyone and not taking care of myself at all. And that's kind of where that came from.
Yeah, and like, I totally relate to that, because like, I'm always, very recently actually, I'm always taking care of everyone and others and trying to do things to make me in the podcast a success and worrying about other people other than me. And I'm just like, I'm never taking care of myself. I'm always like stressing, crying. I'm always like overwhelmed, and like, to think, like, my sister and brother told me a couple days ago that like, they'd be like, Kylie, you need to take care of yourself. You need to enjoy life. You need to enjoy yourself while you can. You can't make this whole thing about your life. You can't make sure everyone's okay. You need to make sure you're okay.
Yeah.
Before anything else. I'm like, well, how am I supposed to do that? Like, how am I supposed to take care of myself? I'm worried about everyone else. Like, my grandma's just got diagnosed with cancer recently. And so I'm really taking care of her, trying to focus on her and make sure she's okay if I need to get her anything. And like, then like other things, podcasts and stuff, I'm like, how am I supposed to kind of chill out and do nothing? How am I supposed to like write stuff down? How am I supposed to take care of myself? You know what I mean?
I know exactly what you mean. And that's such a beautiful gift you've been given. Your empathy and your heart for other people is a gift. But it's just, if you're not using it correctly, it can become really toxic to yourself. But, you know, taking those things that are all beautiful things and making sure you're well rested, you're fed well, you are getting enough sleep, you're getting enough exercise. Just, if I would have learned all that a decade ago at your age instead of now at 25, like, it would have changed the trajectory of my life in a lot of ways, just because I would have known that it is a talent and a gift I've been given, the way I can love people and the way I can take care of other people. But I'm supposed to first take care of myself, because you can't pour from an empty cup. You can't give and give and give if you have nothing left inside of you. So that's where that song was coming from, and I'm glad you can relate to it, but definitely need to love on yourself just like you love on other people.
Mm-hmm, for sure. So since like the pandemic started back in 2020, how do you think like songwriting has changed since the pandemic started?
Oh my gosh, that's a great question. I was doing the Zoom rights for a little while, and I did not like them at all. Instead of meeting in person, we were all meeting over Zoom and trying to write a song on a webcam, and it was really tough. But thankfully, since things have lightened up a lot, we've been able to meet in person and go back to that. And I think COVID did this beautiful thing to people where it allowed, or it kind of forced us, not even allowed us, it forced us to be still for a moment and just really reflect on what actually matters and where our hearts actually are. And you can't distract yourself with the next thing and the next thing. Instead, you kind of had to sit still and reflect on where you are. And I think that brought a lot of really honest songwriting from that. I know it changed a lot for me in that regard.
And so like when COVID started, like for everyone thought like, this is probably gonna be a couple week thing, and then like oh we're gonna live back our normal life. But that now 2 years later it's like still going on. And to think like once the pandemic started, it kind of showed everyone to slow down a bit, like you said, and basically relax and take care of yourself and kind of like make sure like kind of do things in a different way, since you couldn't leave the house and you couldn't really see people from afar, and so you really couldn't do anything. So I'm like, okay, well I should probably write music, write projects. It allow people more time to do things in terms of like basically in the entertainment industry. It's like more time to do things and more time to write and trying to figure out things in the industry and what to change and what not to change. So there's definitely been pros and cons to
Yes. Silver linings for
like
sure.
the pandemic, but still it's just crazy how long we just still in this pandemic.
I cannot agree more.
And so the final question for the interview is, what is some advice for younger generations that like to be a singer-songwriter one day?
Oh man. I think it kind of goes back to a full circle moment with our first question where I just think if I can, and this sounds so cliche, but I genuinely mean this, like if I can do it, anyone can. Like anyone who wants to put their mind to it, really work hard at it, is that passionate about it, and feels that called to do that, can absolutely do it. I'm from a town in Missouri. I have not a single musical contact. No one in my family plays any instruments. If I can be where I'm at now with that kind of a background, I really believe that anyone can do that. But more than that, even, I just think, if you're doing what you love, it's so worth the journey. And I think you're seeing that with this podcast and everything now. Like there's work behind it that people don't see. There's a lot of setup. There's a lot of prep. There's a lot of things that go into it besides just this conversation. It's not that simple. But these moments and getting the reward and seeing the fruit from what all the efforts you're putting in, like that really does make it worthwhile. And it's the same thing with what I'm doing. There's a lot of work that people don't see and a lot of tedious things and things that are kind of annoying that I don't really want to do sometimes. But it's so worth it in the end because, it's something that really does fulfill me and it makes me feel like I'm making a difference in some way. And all the glory goes back to God for that, for allowing me the gifts that I have. But that's truly the best advice I can give you is just like, if you find something you love, just stick with it and keep going.
Yeah, for sure. I totally agree with that. Like any specific thing that you do, either songwriting, acting, podcasting, no matter what it is, there's always a lot of work towards it. No matter what it is, there's always work. And so like people don't see that there's a lot of work to put into something. Like they're like, oh, they're just having this conversation. They probably can't do anything. Like she probably doesn't have to prepare or anything. And then I'm saying the night before, like researching, like
yeah, I can tell you've done
stuff, and like it's harder than you think. And you spend hours of your day trying to figure out researching. And sometimes I'm like, God, I do not want to do this. I don't have time for this. I want to sleep. I want to relax. And like this, it's very hard. And like, what's the word I'm looking for? Like a very like stress relief, I will say.
Yeah.
It's like sometimes it can be very calming and trying to get your mind off things, but then you're like, okay, well, why don't I have to do this? Like it depends on what your aspect is. But like there's always work no matter the situation. You might not think, oh, like this is not hard, but it can be. This conversation might not be hard, but things coming into it is hard.
Yeah, and
there's always something going on with the aspect of what the conversation is about.
I guess another thing I would say, and I want to also just say I'm proud of you for doing this, is that I had a lot of people when I was first starting out. You briefly touched on the bullying thing, and I had a lot of people when I first started saying that I was going to do this ridicule me, make fun of me, talk behind my back, say things about how I wouldn't ever be able to do it. I couldn't do it. Um, they talk about that I wasn't a good singer, or I'm not a good guitar player, or not pretty enough, or whatever it was. There were always things that could have stopped me, and if I would have listened to them, I wouldn't be where I am right now. And so, again, once you find those things that you love, and it's okay to leave it open to change, but if you find that thing you love, don't listen to the voices of other people. You just gotta, take your couple people that you really trust and you believe in and you love, can confide in, and listen to their advice, listen to their encouragement, and keep pressing forward. But there will always be people who say the opposite of what you're doing. I still today have people say things against what I'm doing, but it's like I'm at this point where I don't care anymore, but I haven't always been there. It was really hard for a long time. So I'm proud of you for doing that and for doing something you love regardless of what other people are saying, and coming out of your shell and doing a podcast. That's incredible. That's so cool. And it's going to be worthwhile. So keep at it.
And thank you so much. I'm very proud of you too. Like for always, I was always bullied, like you said. Like people always judge me for who I am and what I do, and like whose sibling I am. Because I'm a twin sister, so I'm always being judged for who I am related to, and people always talk about my back and that I'm not good enough, I'm not pretty enough, and like I'm just not good enough. I shouldn't be doing this, and girls are not welcome in the industry. Like women are not allowed. Men is gonna take over. And like think myself like I can be whoever I want. I don't really care what you think. And like women are really conquering the industry. There's so many people in the industry, like Jennifer Lopez. Like there's so many women out there really conquering the industry. That's like really making an impact on people. And I'm always thinking, if I want to be like them, if I want to make an impact, if I want to be that big a person in the industry, then I have to keep going. No matter how hard the work is, I still have to keep going and work hard.
You are absolutely right. And I think you're going to inspire a lot of people with that attitude.
Thank you so much. I just want to thank you so much for coming on the podcast. You're amazing and so kind. I just want to thank you so much for coming on the podcast. You're amazing. And thank you so much for coming on again.
I can't thank you enough for having me. I'm so thankful for the opportunity.
Thank you so much.
You're the sweetest thing.
Thank you. We'll definitely speak soon.
I would love that. I would love that.
So thank you so much.